And for our music today, the National Anthem with Kate Loeb and Bob Hamilton.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we've hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. It's always have this great talent within the club itself. Thank you very much, Kate and Bob. Invocation, Tim Carlson.
This is the time of the year when you select committees, and I hope everybody will give some reflection that maybe you want to be on the invocation, and as I sometimes call it, inspiration committee. So I hope you will volunteer. During the past couple weeks, I've been reading an awful lot about the golf tour and the fact that the Saudi-backed LIV golf tour is in competition with the PGA. But one of the things I didn't really realize is when I read that the PGA Tour is the largest of the sports institutions in supporting charities. It was said that it was double that of the National Football League. That's a huge contribution. That's a huge contribution, frankly, to the types of things that we as Rotarians want to support. And sometimes it's admitted. People do things for money. They do things for that definition of value. But the other definition of value, which is the giving that this club does, the giving that Rotary International does, is every bit as important and should be central to the decision-making that we make. It's not always about value dollars. It's sometimes about value, which is represented by the ethics and the outreach that we have. Would you join me in a word of prayer, asking for the strength to further those particular values? Great Spirit, we implore upon you to give us the strength to support the values of giving and charity and doing good for others that constantly we as Rotarians strive to achieve. And we hope that you will strengthen us on a regular basis toward those particular goals. In your name, we ask it. Amen.
Thank you very much, Tim. And since you brought up the PGA, I happen to have a telephone here that had PGA on the top. Is that by any chance yours?
What, this is a phone?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
No.
It was in my back pocket. I appreciate it.
But there's one here that the only thing that's lit up is PGA Tour, and it was left on a table. And we got in here. Anybody missing a telephone? That we're actually getting notices from the PGA? I thought for sure once you did that, that was yours.
If you've ever seen me play golf, you know it wasn't mine.
Well, I thought you'd like to know, watch somebody who could play. Anyway. So anyway, thank you all both very much, and welcome to all the guests today. It's really great to see people, the room filling up again, and people bringing guests to the meeting today. Really look forward to today's meeting. I think you're going to enjoy this very much. We have just a couple announcements. One is, remember, I think a lot of you have already gotten something in your email or a call from someone about tonight's Historical Perspectives program, which will be at YVC at the Conference Center in Room D. And it starts at 5:15. It's just an hour, but it gives some of the background for what is going to be now the first nationally recognized Juneteenth holiday. And that's been brought to you through a lot of work by the Racial Ad Hoc Justice Committee. And so I hope if you have the time and would like to do that, it would be really great and set the tone for some other things that will be going on throughout the next year. Other thing is I announced last week, and some of you have already done this, but to bring into the office any kind of books, games, coloring books, puzzles, anything whatsoever that would be appropriate for middle and high school students that are going to school but are also unfortunately in the juvenile detention center. I took, and other people have taken some tours of that, and it's a great place. The people who work there are incredible, and they would really appreciate having some things that for the students to actually work on and whatnot when they're in their off hours from studying or their other responsibilities. So if you have anything, Carolyn and Lorna are there. I unfortunately caught them playing the game several times, but that's just because they're testing them to make sure all the pieces are there. So Dave Brown also marked, and since we're, because of the pandemic and lots of other things going on, our Jobs for Youth has been really hard to get going this year, and just having it all work out. But the Parks and Recreation Department is looking for people. And so if any of you have that are youth, to either apply yourself or have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, whatever, friends who might be interested in a job, talk to Dave Brown and he can put you in touch with, he's way in the back there, he can put you in touch with the right people who, and so they can apply. But it would be a great opportunity, and I know a lot of people are always looking for summer jobs. And with that, we now have none other than our fabulous membership chairs this year, Sherry and Austin, who have done a great job in the face of great trials.
Hey everyone. I thought I knew everyone in all of Yakima, but I'm seeing a lot of new faces out here, so I really appreciate you guys attending and coming to these events. I just want to do a quick show of hands here. Who has either joined Rotary in the last 12 months or is a new potential member that is interested in seeing what Rotary's done and not currently a member? Could I see hands here? So look around. I'm bad at math, but I'm going to guess it's that many. So I want to give a quick round of applause for everyone. Thank you for bringing new people to this community. Thank you for bringing new people to Rotary. It's just been excellent for us because it's really been not much work on our side and people just keep flowing in. What we've seen so far is over, at least as far as our knowledge, and I'm sure it's more, over a dozen Rotarians that have brought guests along that have become members in the last 12 months. We've seen over 20 potential new members, and it looks like half of them are here today, which is pretty cool. We've held 4 major events. So we did 2 Rover, Rotaries, and Refreshments, which is really hard to say. We'll figure out a new title for next year. Yeah. We did a Black History Month event, and then a Bring a Colleague to Rotary. So through all of that, as well as your help, we've just seen a lot of new influx to Rotary, so I'm really excited to see all the new faces here. So I will turn it over to Sherry here. We did do a drawing and a prize for the Rotarian who has brought a potential new member, as well as a potential new member. So to give the award or the prize, I'll turn it over to Sherry.
Thank you. Thanks, Austin. So we did the drawing ahead of time just to save time. The prizes, we have 2 prize packages, like Austin said, one for the Rotarian that brought a prospective member for our 4 events and for the prospective member as well. And those prizes are a pair of tickets to Capitol Theater Best of Show Series for 2022-2023. Thank you, Charlie. Along with a $50 Visa gift card that you can use for drinks and food, whatever you would like before the show or after. So first we will do the winner of for the prospective member. This was a This person was a guest of David Cobia at the first annual Refreshments with Rotary and Rover 2. Might I add, we almost had more Rovers than Rotarians, I'm just saying. It was like 15 to 13. Anyway, I digress. And that winner is Jason Larson. I don't think that he's here today. He is an optometrist at Apple Valley Eye Center. So I will be contacting him for that prize. And the Rotarian that is our winner, and I don't know if she is here either, but that Rotarian is Amanda Ryder. Amanda, are you here? I don't see her. So Amanda Ryder brought two prospective members to our Black History Month program with Matthew Law in February. So those are our two winners. We will get them their prizes, and thank you all so much. And keep bringing guests.
Thank you both. As I said, both Sherry and Austin worked really hard this year, along with all of you who helped bring new members in a challenging year. So thank you. Thank you very much. Sergeant at Arms, moving on to another person who had a challenging year as head of our social committee, fighting smoke and COVID during some of these events, but that's Mike Hummel, and he will now extract money from you.
Thank you, President John. Fear not, Rotarians, fear not. I come in peace. I come in peace. For those of you that didn't get a chance to see my last Sergeant at Arms presentation, I may have taken a couple of friendly pokes at the inadequacies of some of your school's football programs, but I'm not going to do that today. Today, I bring a brand new topic I hope you'll find enjoyable. I've titled it, The Unknown Hummel Child. Many of you have had the opportunity to meet my oldest son, Max. Max is naturally sweet, kind, and loves to help others. He listens well, and he always aims to please. Most of you have not yet had the chance to meet my younger son, Jack. Being all of 3 years old, it's not a mistake that Jack has not been invited to too many of Dad's Rotary events yet. There are certain individuals in this world which nicknames seem to find. Jack happens to be one of those individuals, and he currently has two solid nicknames that I believe are going to stick through the years. Jack Jack, which is just so darn cute and rolls off the tongue. You'll often hear me refer to Jack as Jack Jack, and as does his older brother. The beef originated when he was a baby around the time that he was working on his third chin. His robust body type just screamed, the beef. He's since thinned out with age, but the name the beef still fits his personality remarkably well, and so it remains. If you have ever given one of your children a less than flattering nickname, pay $1. During our potty training time with Jack, he received a bathrobe as a Christmas gift from his Nana. Jack loved the bathrobe, particularly with nothing underneath it. One evening after bath time, Jack was sporting his post-wash robe look with his birthday suit underneath. My wife Maggie oversaw baths that night, and I was in the kitchen doing dishes. After the boys were downstairs for a few minutes, I noticed something on the floor in the area by the table. That something, it turned out, was a perfectly shaped toddler poop on my kitchen floor. I called Jack over and asked him if the fecal deposit on my floor was in fact his. Jack, still clad in robe and naked underneath, leaned over the poop in question and investigated for about 4 or 5 seconds before confirming, yes, that is my poop. The nature of his confirmation worrying me that there may be other poops in my house that I'm not yet aware of. If full contact parenting has hardened your gag reflex, pay $1. Whoops, I'm supposed to be clicking through slides as I do this. That was the one for him pooping. Sorry. There you go. Here's your next one. Always a pistol. We've had several interactions from daycare teachers informing us that Jack wasn't a great listener today, or Jack didn't share well today. One day I was in charge of picking up the kids, and at Jack's door I was informed that they had some issues with them being physical with the other kids in the daycare. In an effort to show the teacher that we are involved parents and we take this feedback seriously, I gave him a stern talking to right there, explaining we use words to express how we feel, not our hands. The next day, I was again on pickup duties, and the same teacher greeted me at the door. When I inquired about Jack's behavior for the day, she enthusiastically told me he was a wonderful boy who listened well all day. I looked down at Jack to give him praise for doing so well. But before I could say a word, Jack looked up at me with eyes full of pride and in his little 2-year-old voice proudly exclaimed, "I didn't spit on anybody today, Daddy." If you've ever been proud of the extremely high bar that your children set for themselves, pay $1. At the Hummel house, weekend breakfast has become a staple with the dad and the boys. Having the time to make breakfast and spend quality time with my kids to start each weekend day is something I truly enjoy. Pancakes are a constant at these gatherings, and Jack likes his made small so he can dip them into the syrup cup by himself. As you can imagine, this method of consumption often leads to extremely sticky hands and face. During one such breakfast not too long ago, I turned toward the island in our kitchen at which the boys were seated to find that Jack had climbed down from the stool he was previously perched atop. "Jack, are you done with your breakfast?" I inquired. Jack gave no response, but started to move slowly toward the living room and waiting cartoons. "Jack, if you're done with your breakfast, you need to wipe your hands and face before you leave," I informed him, as I got a cloth wet and ready for the task. Again, Jack gave no response, but rather quickened his pace toward the living room and the waiting couch. Following him now, I stated assertively, "Jack, your hands and face are covered in syrup and you're not allowed on the couch until you've been wiped down." Ignoring me still, Jack breaks into a full-on sprint to the living room with me hot on his tail. Jack positions himself on the far side of the couch with hands up on either side of his face as if to show me the amount of filth on his little hands. A standoff over the chaise section of our couch ensued, and I forcefully exclaimed to Jack, "Jack, if you touch Dad's nice couch with your syrup-covered hands and face, so help me God." To which Jack responded, "If your children ever pushed you to the point that you had to leave the room for fear of what you might do next, pay $1." While he still has enough fire in his belly to continue to carry the moniker, The Beef, I am happy to say that it appears Jack is growing out of his terrible 2s and 3s as he is now nearing age 4. We continue to see less of the questionable behavior and more of the sweet, curious young boy that is finding his place in this world. The talking tos from teachers continue to decline and the preschool work continues to improve. And Jack continues to learn how to process his emotions. While still rare, Jack will now approach mom or dad unprovoked and give a hug and say, "I love you," something that never happened in the past. My personal favorite is when he hugs me as hard as he can in an effort to squeeze the juice out of me. Jack's talents continue to become more apparent and my love for him continues to grow. If you have ever become irrationally emotional due to the love of your child, pay $1. Hopefully, sooner than later, Jack will start to attend Rotary events with Dad and Max, and you'll get a chance to meet my dear, sweet Jack Garland Hummel, a.k.a. Jack, a.k.a. The Beef. I thank you.
Great job. Great job, Mike. I'm sure all of you with children certainly can understand that. And those of us who just have pets can understand it also. They're even less likely to pay attention. So anyway, to introduce our program today, we have none other than Casey Core.
Thank you, everybody. We have a special treat as our speaker. He is recognized as one of the greatest artists in journalism today. He's been recognized around the country and even beyond. But I'm here to say, I'm not sure he's such a good artist. Look at my face. All right, Carolyn, would you do the honors, please? Do I look anything like this that is about to appear on the screen any minute? All right. All right, do it.
It looks just like you.
No, completely wrong, completely wrong. Wrong. I'll tell you what I look like, Carolyn. What is about to appear on the screen now. All right, that's much better. You know, I'm not the first person stung by David Horsey. Just ask countless mayors, members of Congress, mayors, senators, even presidents. We all felt an owie because David Horsey, like nobody else, finds the pompous, the ridiculous, and the wrong-headedness of politicians and renders it perfectly in one comic image. Laughter is just one result. His correctives reminds us of our duty in the American experiment. It's that talent, smarts, courage that has earned David Horsey 2 Pulitzer Prizes. He is now a political commentator for the Seattle Times. His work is syndicated by the Tribune Media Services and appears in more than 200 newspapers, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, and many others. A graduate of the University of Washington, his career as a writer and a cartoonist has taken him to national party conventions, presidential primaries, the Olympic Games, the Super Bowl, and assignments in Europe, Japan, and Mexico. As a Rotary Foundation scholar, David earned an MA in International Relations from the University of Kent at Canterbury. He was also awarded an honorary doctorate from Seattle University. He is the author of 8 books. Without question, our next speaker is one of the greatest journalists in Northwest history. David Horsey has made our newspapers better. He brings reason, experience, a Mark Twain quality of humor, and humane values to our public arena. He deepens our understanding of our world, reminds us of our obligations to each other, and summons the better angels of our nature. So please give a big Rotary welcome to David Horsey.
Wow. Apparently that David Horsey it couldn't come today, so I'm here, and that's the nicest thing Casey's ever said about me. I was best man in his wedding, by the way. And probably after seeing those caricatures, I realized that I've probably Casey's probably appeared in more of my cartoons as just a person in the background of anyone, and I resisted the impulse to show you one cartoon, which it was during the mayor's race in Seattle, and somehow I ended up putting him in sort of in the corner of things at a Hooters, which he never. I'm not sure he's forgiven me for, because he was very recognizable, and everyone at the Seattle Times and throughout the city gave him a bad time for that. Anyway, happy to be here today, and I just want to preface this by saying that by the end of this, a number of you will be offended, because that's my job, unfortunately. I have never done a cartoon about anything that didn't upset somebody, no matter how innocuous or silly it is. It's just the weird nature of my job. But I don't know if I ever offended you, Sid. But Sid, I was very happy to see your former Congressman Sid Morrison here. He's a veteran from a much better political time. And I know I did draw you, but I was pretty nice, much nicer than to Casey. Casey mentioned that I was a Rotary Foundation scholar back in the day, and I actually wanted to start with that because it kind of reflects on a lot of things I want to talk about. It was in the mid-'80s, and I was a little older than the usual recipient. I was, I think, 30, 31, my wife and I went there with our 2 little kids, and it was just an amazing year in which it expanded my understanding of how the world works, and it made me understand my own country better by looking at it from a different perspective. But it's funny, the thing that has stuck with me, and I was telling Casey this yesterday, I had a lecturer who said there are 2 principles that every student, or academic, political leader, just common citizen should keep in mind when just looking at the world and analyzing anything, including politics. He said the first rule is something isn't true just because an expert or a political leader or someone on TV or someone online these days says it's true. You know, essentially, let's test all the information you're being given. And that's easy for a lot of us. I mean, it's an easier thing to do than the second one. The second principle is something isn't true just because you agree with it. And especially these days, I think we've all gotten into our silos much more, and we just look at stuff that reinforces what we already believe. And so part of my job, I guess, is to try to shake that up a little bit. But I thank you all for having this program that got me to England for the Rotary for a year, and being able to take my family along. And I ended up, after that year, graduating in this wonderful cathedral, Canterbury Cathedral. It's, I don't know, 1,000 years old or whatever, walking down the aisle. But 30 years later, so this is in 2016, I got to go back because the University of Kent gave me an honorary doctorate. And I got to wear this outfit, which is fun. But this sort of, I don't know, ultimate moment, ultimate in many ways, ultimately funny, ultimately wonderful, was when I was walking down the aisle in Canterbury Cathedral, and preceding me was all of the faculty in all their robes, and all of the students who are graduating, and then it was me walking alone, and there was this brass, this brass group, like 10 people with trumpets and horns and everything, playing this amazing, lofty music, and here I come by myself walking down the aisle, and this is true. My thought, I almost burst out laughing because I thought, do you know I'm a cartoonist? It was just, anyway, great honor, but it is a strange job, I have to admit. I have a friend who once said, every girl wants to grow up and marry a cartoonist, and then she burst out laughing, and I thought, thanks a lot. It's a strange job. I started early. This is one of my early works. I was probably 7 years old when I did this. I don't know if it's a pro-gun drawing or anti-gun. It's probably more pro. I was into cowboys and all of that. But so the art was an early, an obvious talent that I had. But what I do, political cartooning, is more than that. It's journalism, really. And for me personally, it is also a patriotic act. Because, I get stuff wrong all the time, but always my intent is to try to stand up for the values of this country and to point out where I don't think they're being honored in the political realm. So, I try to remind myself of that from time to time, because sometimes it's hard to find the ideas. It's like, I've done this 1,000 times, but it's like, it's worth doing it, because once in a while I hit it right, and it makes a little bit of difference. Coming out of the University of Washington, I didn't know that this was a real job, being a political cartoonist. So I started working as a reporter, and that's where I met Casey and his wife Sally at the Journal-American in Bellevue, Washington. And when I was doing politics, even then, I got the chance to meet Jimmy Carter there when he was president, and he's complimenting me on my hair, of course. But after that, I was offered a job to do cartoons at the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, and I had no idea what amazing luck that was. And of course, I right away started making fun of the guy who had been so nice to me. So then I said, look, Brezhnev, if you don't get your troops out of Cuba in 24 hours, I'll be forced to unleash a volley of symbolic gestures. And his wife says, you're tough, Jimmy. I like a man who's tough. So I do have this curious task of making fun of important people, and with the intent not of picking on them personally, but to, highlight issues, highlight moments where they may have gotten things wrong, or just mainly to get people to think about all this stuff and decide what they think about it. Now, the most successful cartoon I've ever done is this one, even to today. I mean, I've been obviously doing this a heck of a long time, but to this day, the most successful cartoon I did is this, The World According to Ronald Reagan. And this is like the third version of it. It was just imagining the world through the president's eyes, and I don't know if you can see some of that. Half of the United States is Republicans and other real Americans, and then there's California, and then up in the corner is, can't actually see what that says. It was like Ecotopia, it's tree huggers and that sort of thing. But the first version of this cartoon just was a much smaller map, less detailed. It ran in the PI, but it was so popular, I thought, I'm going to do this as a poster. So this is the poster version. And it went all over the world. I had a friend who went mountain climbing at Mount Kilimanjaro. When he came down from the mountain, there was a little shack, a little bar at the bottom of the mountain, and he went in there to refresh himself, and this thing was on the wall above the bar. So it's amazing how far they will go. Reagan was a great subject, and I was sort of sorry to see him go. I drew this image from the movie Casablanca, and he's saying, "Here's looking at you, kid. Now go with George, but remember, we'll always have Grenada." And this was particularly, this moment, sort of the end of the Reagan years and during the Bush presidency, I think it was probably the most hopeful time for me in politics, because it was like the end of the Cold War. Reagan had, I disagreed with Reagan on all kinds of things, but I credit him for teaming with Gorbachev and bringing the Cold War to a peaceful end. And then I credit George H.W. Bush for making sure the landing was a soft one. And this was a time when democracy was rising across Eastern Europe. Bush carried out this lightning war, the Gulf War, and slapped down Saddam Hussein, and the United States was preeminent in the world, and it seemed like everything's great. It's all going to be good from now on. Didn't quite work out that way, of course. But nevertheless, this is sort of typical of the cartoons I did, just summing up how it ended. A wall collapsed on him, East German communism. But following those guys in the 90s, 90s were sort of I thought in a way, a trivial time for politics, because a lot of these big issues had sort of been settled, and life was good, so politics got a little more petty. And this guy became president. Here actually, my wife and I are meeting Bill Clinton. This was at a White House Correspondents' Dinner where I was being honored because I just won a Pulitzer for drawing cartoons about Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton. So this was an awkward moment. But he was nice about it. He probably never saw my cartoons. I don't know. But I'm sure whatever I did was not the worst that he had to go through. Just here are a couple of the cartoons that got me a Pulitzer, which shows how ridiculous Pulitzers are, I guess. This is the president. Sure, I'll testify to Ken Starr, but only in a manner that preserves the dignity of the presidency. Anyway, and then this one as well. and that's Newt Gingrich. This was a little later. This is after the '98 congressional elections. Of course, Clinton had been impeached, but survived that, and the one who suffered most from it was probably Newt Gingrich, who lost his majority in the House, and so he's saying, "Curse you, Peter Pan," and he's saying, "Golly, maybe I really don't have to ever grow up." And Tinkerbell, you may note, looks a lot like Monica. But so, great deal. This president gave me a Pulitzer, so why not the next one too? So George W. Bush, nice guy. Actually, George W. Bush, there's this cliche in politics that, you know, people vote for a guy you'd want to have a beer with. And actually, he is the kind of guy you'd probably want to have a beer with. He'd be a lot of fun. I'm just not sure he had the right job there, but he had other people taking care of things for him. This is an early cartoon I did of him when he went to England to meet the Queen. And she's saying, "Of course, I just read the speeches they give me. Someone else exercises all the power. After all, I only have this job because of who my father was." That all sounds oddly familiar. I'm glad you guys are laughing. I'll fix that later. So, anyway, as Casey said, you know, I haven't just drawn presidents. I've drawn all kinds of people, business people, anybody who, you know, is in the news, who is doing something that I think, in my assessment, is you know, undermining our city or state or our values as Americans. And what I do, you know, political cartooning is very much a creature of newspapers. And what happened in the you know, the 2000s was this huge shift in the newspaper business, and you know, the business model for newspapers just disappeared, as unfortunately most communities know. Certainly the Herald Republic here ran into some huge problems because of that. And even though I thought, you know, I'd be working at the Seattle Post-Intelligencer forever, in 2009, the newspaper closed, and I did this cartoon reflecting on the new world of newspaper journalism. And it's the Daily Planet, you know, with Lois Lane and Clark Kent, and the editor saying, "Due to the," if I can read this right, "due to the big losses we've suffered, the Daily Planet is being sold to Lex Luthor, and he's laying off everyone but Jimmy Olsen." And Clark Kent, Superman, says, "Lois, I've got to save the newspaper industry." And she says, "Oh, just give it up, Clark, and start a blog." That was sort of the magic word at the time. A lot of my friends who were out of a job, and it did tend to be the older people, they said, "Okay, we're going to start blogs, we're going to do blah, blah." All this stuff is like, I think they're all selling used cars now. But luckily, I landed pretty well. I went to the Los Angeles Times, which was like going from the minor leagues to the major leagues. So it was pretty cool. One of the, I'm kind of taking a little shortcut here to show you this, but well, first I'll show. So Seattle, I was kind of this. I had a pretty good reputation. People knew me on the street and everything. But LA Times, suddenly I was getting calls from CBS and MSNBC and CNN. Not because I was anything special, but I had LA Times after my name. So some of the most embarrassing moments of my life were on national television, because they'd ask me questions and I would start blubbering, and I realized I'm not very good at this. I'm much better than sitting in a room by myself drawing a picture and thinking about it. But nevertheless, it was a fun ride. I was with the LA Times for 6 years. One of the most fun things was I was also doing cartoons on Hollywood, and the entertainment world, and was able to go to all these parties, like after the Emmys and the Grammys, and because my wife was working at the University of Washington, she was sort of in and out of town. My daughter, that little girl you saw in the first photo in Canterbury, by then was working at the University of Southern California. So she was my date at these Hollywood events. And I just wanted to tell this story because it's, so at the HBO party, my daughter and I got in line where they were taking pictures of some kind to show you at the event. And she needed to go to the restroom, so she left me, and this kind of well-dressed, sharp-looking guy behind me sort of leaned in conspiratorially and said, "So, how long have you two been together?" And it was like the best response of my whole life. I said, "Since she was born." And he went, "Oh my God." And then he said, oh, okay. Anyway, she was a great date. Where am I? I just got lost on that one. Okay. Yes. So, then we're kind of, through the LA Times years, kind of in a new era of politics that in some ways began with, on a very hopeful note. When Barack Obama became the first African American to become president, even people who voted against him, I think, felt encouraged that we finally kind of broke that particular glass ceiling. So I did this cartoon looking at, most of the cartoons I do are kind of negative, cheap shots, but this is sort of saying, look, we've gotten past our history of Jim Crow and segregation and slavery, and this is a great moment. Of course, it didn't take real long for Obama to get the same sort of treatment that all our presidents do from everyone. I pictured him when Obamacare was being proposed and having trouble kind of revving up and getting it out there. I imagined him as a traveling doc, and the mechanic saying, "I'll have this contraption running in a jiffy, Doc." And he sees this little kid over there and says, "Hello there, Sonny. Did you come to sign up?" And he says, "Nope, my pappy says you're a communist, and I come by to see what a communist looks like." And then it got even, and that's the initial criticisms of Obama were kind of the usual things any president gets, but things sort of took a weird turn because our whole political world was taking a nastier turn, and people, all of us, as I said earlier, were getting in our silos and only believing things that reinforced our biases. So I drew this cartoon to sort of deal with that. This guy's watching, I'm not sure which channel, but before, that's right, he's watching a political ad. Before Barack Obama became president, the economy was great and the budget was balanced. Now Obama wants to double taxes on the middle class and force our children into gay marriages. And he did not get Osama bin Laden, who is alive and living in Palm Springs. This ad was paid for by the anonymous billionaires who think you'll believe anything Political Action Committee. And the guy says, "Honey, bin Laden's in Palm Springs." This is, getting into the crazy conspiracy world we live in now. And I tried to capture that separation, that growing separation with this cartoon. Romeo and Juliet. Why say, dear Juliet, that our love can never be? Because you watch Rachel Maddow, while I get news from Hannity. Yeah. And so in this new environment with, everyone looking at different media and most of all the internet spreading a lot of misinformation and crazy stuff. A new kind of politician wandered in. This is where half of you are going to get mad at me, by the way. The President Donald Trump, this is the mind of the president. Tweets. Now, I gotta make sure I'm on track here. Sorry. Just talk among yourselves. Because I changed these cartoons and I can't remember what's coming up next. Well, let's just find out. Okay. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, President Trump did many, many things. Some I thought were a betrayal of our values, basically. And one of them was when there are all these kids at the border who are separated from their parents for months and months and not, I hope they're reunited by now, I don't know. So I did this rather harder edge cartoon. Give me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, and I'll lock them up and take away their children. Anyway, then on the international level, there was a concern I had, and in light of what's going on in Ukraine today, I think I was having the right impulse when President Trump went to Europe, met with NATO, and was, let's say, not real friendly with those guys, and then went on to Helsinki and buddied up with Vladimir Putin and chose to believe him over our own intelligence agencies about the level to which Russia may have been involved in election meddling. I did this cartoon. Putin didn't attack America. He told me so. So I'm going to hit you with this next cartoon, because we did have an election recently, well, in 2020, and he decided that he didn't like how it came out. So I drew this cartoon. I declare myself the winner. Now go make it happen. So it's the Wicked Witch of the North sending off the flying monkeys to bring lawsuits all over the country to reverse the election because it was corrupt and there was all this nefarious stuff that went on, and the Venezuelans and the Chinese and everybody else, it rigged the election, and after more than 60 court cases, none of them successful, and after the president's campaign manager said, no, you didn't win, and after the Attorney General of the United States said, no, you didn't win, he continued to say this. And I thought, I don't think that's conservative. Not in the way I've always thought of it. When I was a kid, my dad took me to the Republican convention in San Francisco. This is how old I am, in 1964. And I walked around the streets carrying signs for Barry Goldwater. And this is Barry. Famously at that event, he said, extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And depending on how you look at that, you can agree or disagree with it, but Barry Goldwater was a principled conservative. He is a man I still admire. He was a great senator, and one of the great services he did for the United States was to convince Richard Nixon that, it's time for you to go. So that has always been even when I disagree, my vision of a conservative. We kind of have a more modern version, though. Extremism in the defense of paranoid, seditious fantasies is no vice. So now, this is the moment where I say, if you think I'm just another liberal lunatic from Seattle, I want to show you some of the cartoons that get me in trouble in Seattle. like this one. It's untrue that there's a politically correct orthodoxy that inhibits freedom of expression on our campus. Political correctness is a myth. And anyone who says different is a right-wing racist who should be hounded out of this university. Now, the most interesting thing about this cartoon is I did that 30 years ago. This is, did I do my math right? Yes, this was like 1992. So that kind of craziness has been going on longer than we can imagine. But it certainly is sort of a dominant strain, shall we say, in the Seattle City Council these days. So this is a cartoon that got me in trouble with folks who think things are going well there. This is when there was a head tax proposed by the City Council. And so all these businessmen are being taken to the gallows. I was hoping they'd only use this on Jeff Bezos. But what's funny about this, so I got a lot of heat for this, I got accused of being a right-winger. People actually look closely, like Shama Sawant there, who's a socialist member of the city council. They said, you drew her with buck teeth, and you drew that other one with buck teeth. Only the women of color were drawn with buck teeth. And it's like, I didn't even think about that. I don't know if that's buck teeth, but look at the woman down in the corner there. She doesn't have any, I think she's white. I don't know. Jeez. But people will look at every little piece of these cartoons that I knock out in a few hours trying to beat a deadline and figure everything means something. And I suppose if you work hard enough. So. Yeah, that is Casey, yes. So, they're all Casey. Yeah. So this is one that pretty much offended all kinds of people, including the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Because Trump actually designated Seattle as an anarchist city. So when Biden came in, he withdrew that designation. I don't know how that's even happens, but so it's one of them saying, Biden just canceled Trump's designation of us as an anarchist city. And the guy says, but what about our new ad campaign? Visit Seattle, come for the riot, stay for the crab cakes. But yeah, apparently the Convention and Visitors Bureau complained to our ad department about, it was like, and I thought, really? Can you guys can anyone take a joke anymore? So I will conclude the visuals here with this cartoon. And this is sort of where I'm afraid we are right now, and I hope we can get away from it. E pluribus unum, our national motto. These people are saying, I love America. It's other Americans I despise. Anyway, so I don't know what our timing is, but I'd be happy to take more questions as long as they're about Casey. Yeah, oh, thanks. Oh, okay, great, yeah. Because I didn't really have a conclusion, but yes. Yeah, well, for most of my career, she asked what materials I use, what I draw these on, and what pens I use. Early on, for most of my career, I did it the old-fashioned way, drawing paper with ink, an ink bottle that literally spilled all the time, and a brush or pens. But these days, I actually draw everything on an iPad. So there's no physical cartoon. I just do it all there, and I can do it anywhere, and just deliver it electronically. So it's a revolution. And they somehow come out okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's, I mean, every political cartoonist is sort of a, is like a lone gunslinger out there. But we do have gunslinger conventions. So there's a group called the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists that, except for the last couple of years with COVID, we have a yearly convention, and it's a great, it's a wonderful moment because most of us are working alone all the time, and other than maybe calling someone occasionally to just talk about whatever, it's a very individual thing. Even on the newspaper itself, you know, there's only one person who does it. But these conventions are great because we can finally be with people who understand us. But I must say, I almost laughed when you called it an industry. It's a little more like a mom and pop store these days. It's a dying profession. I don't know if there will be, certainly in the, as I said early on, political cartoons are a product, at least in this country, of the newspaper industry. And as the newspaper industry has contracted, so have the number of jobs for cartoonists on staff. So it's a very small number that are left. I've been really lucky to keep, it's like the glacier is melting and I keep finding another little piece of ice to jump to. So the Seattle Times is my latest piece of ice. And there are cartoonists doing stuff online, but actually getting paid to do it and having this place to have your stuff published is disappearing, which is unfortunate for us all, because I don't know how you live without us. We're like polar bears. Yes. Yeah. Oh yes, I think that was a reference to, there was a weird incident where he was out canoeing or something, and a rabbit was swimming, and it was sort of like kind of attacked him, and it was one of those sad moments for the guy. He's a great human being, but it seems like these odd things happened to him that made him look ridiculous. And being attacked by a rabbit in a rowboat is just kind of weird. So yeah, that was very good. See, sometimes the little details do mean something. Yeah, how are we doing? All right. Well, I think I'm being shoved off the stage. So thanks. It's great to be here.
That was terrific, and I certainly am one of those people who always enjoys the cartoons, whether I agree with the premise of them or not. I still love seeing the take on them, and I think we all need to poke fun at ourselves a lot more than we do at many times. And on that note, we have one last piece of business today, and we will let our speaker draw the winning ticket. This is a little tradition we do for helping raise a little bit of money each time. Just bring any ticket and Casey. No. If it is, he has to disqualify himself. The winning number is 2335567. Carter. The way this works is they get a piece of marble out here, and if they get the white marble, they get half the pot. That accumulates. But see, what we do is we take the white marble out. No. We got the white marble. There you go. Talk to Carolyn, and you can talk to Carolyn, and she'll tell you what you won, and what you can do with. All right. Well, thank you all very much. Next week, remember this afternoon there is a program at YVC at 5:15, and next week our speaker is Melanie Cunningham Followed by that, you will be able to say Sarnyaro to me, which is probably what you're counting for. So, anyway, and we are adjourned.